Hey everyone, welcome to the episode 1 of the Fluential Friends podcast, where the story of your life can help somebody else's life story. I'm here with my very first guest,
Come
a
on.
great friend of mine. I'm super excited to have him on, Jeff T. Osborne.
Come on.
How you doing?
What's up, big dog? Man, I'm excited. Episode number 1.
Episode number 1. The funny thing is, a lot of people don't even know we just had a full-on hour conversation
Yeah.
before the actual show.
Yeah. I wish we would have hit record on that one too.
We should have.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
alone
yeah.
was his own episode. And so, like, you are such an influential person, right? And I think kind of fits perfect for episode number 1, like fluential, influential. And what I'm trying to do with this podcast, since this is episode number 1, people don't really know what the
Yeah.
podcast is for, is I'm looking for people who are influential in their life, regardless of social status. Do you have a great story? Can we help other people? Can we just reach out to just one person and help them improve the quality of their life? And when I was looking for guests for the podcast, there was someone that just kept popping up in my head, and then you start popping up on my Instagram. And I was like, you know what? Jeff is the perfect person to bring on for episode number 1 to really get this launched off. And for people who don't really know Jeff, please explain who you are, what you do, and
Yeah.
just, give us the pleasure. The floor is yours.
Man, I love it, bro. I'm stoked to be able to be here, be your first guest. It's an honor. I'll tell you this, man. I did a couple push-ups before I came in here because I knew I was gonna be your first guest. I said, baby, look, I'm fasting. I told my wife Nadia, like, I go eat so I look good. He gonna see my rolls through my shirt. So definitely wanted to be able to be here, man. But no, it's an honor. Yeah, so I tell most people, man, I tell them I get to love on people for a living. And what I get to do is I'm a transformational identity coach and a motivational speaker, author. I get to preach at conferences, and so I'm a man of faith as well. And so my major focus is helping individuals really shift behaviors, break free from self-sabotaging cycles, really defining what your dream is. What does that look like for your life? And ultimately learning how to love who you've been authentically created to be, live in that identity. And something that that's my addiction in life, is being able to do that.
And so before you were Jeff T. Osborne, right? This
Yeah.
world-renowned motivational speaker, I really want to dig down
Yeah.
and peel the layers of the onion back. And what created who you are today. And I would like to go back far back when you were a child.
Yeah.
Whenever you were growing up, did you ever think you would be a life coach, motivational speaker, helping out thousands, millions now,
Yeah,
people
yeah.
around the world?
Man, I wish I could tell you I knew exactly where I was going to be. I knew that there was something in me that loved people from a young age. When I saw people hurting, it hurt me. I would save up my money for my birthday gift, and I would see kids who didn't have nice shoes or didn't have that, and I would use my birthday money to buy them something. So there was always this empath in me to be connected to people or this overcoming story. But growing up for me, man, I grew up in Orange County, California. So, and specifically in Huntington Beach. And so we were the only black family in the neighborhood. And so I grew up, being a sponsored skateboarder, surfer, being in that area at that time. I didn't even put 2 and 2 together when I'd be chased out of Huntington High, the skate park by skinheads. I never really put 2 and 2 together that it was my skin color. I didn't really look at it like that. Growing up with a dad who grew up in segregated Virginia. My dad played tennis, big dude. He was like 6'5". You see my
Yeah, I
dad,
know
dog.
your
He's
dad.
like
Oh, yeah.
6'4", like almost 300 pounds, size 16 shoe, playing tennis. But I remember my dad, he taught us something when we were there. He said, son, you are not the color of your skin. You are the color of your character. And I think that when those moments happened, my dad allowed me to see, and my brothers and sisters and myself, to see ourselves in a different light. So growing up, I never looked at my color as the reason why I was treated. I just looked at it as, that person's got an issue. they don't know me, but I wasn't aware of a lot of those challenges. And so growing up, I was in that I was the only black kid in the group, if you will, who was skating or surfing. It wasn't big then. There was no Theodis Beasley and all these dope cats that you see now of skateboarding and infiltrating that. And so growing up in that young age, man, that was something that was there. And then like we talked about, there was a period where we became homeless, and being homeless, understanding that my parents were always people of faith. My dad was a very hard man because he was in the Marine Corps, but he loved outrageously, kind of instilled that faith in us. And then when we moved more inland towards Los Angeles, it was this place where now I grew up in Huntington Beach. You know, I spoke proper, I skateboarded. And then when I came inland towards the LA area, the black kids were like, yo, you're white. And so I was caught in between this middle where it was, I love people. I was too black to be white. I was too white to be black. And so I was struggling with my identity, but because I was an athlete and because I love people and because I could connect with them and make them laugh or be really cool, it was that middle ground. But I was stuck in my identity and not knowing where I fit in.
Yeah, and that's got to be tough, man, because like you're trying to find your way. You're trying to discover what is my purpose, right? Especially as a kid. That's kind of what all kids are doing. They're kind of trying out different things, hanging out with different groups of people, trying to see where they fit in.
Yep.
And for you, you're kind of being kicked out from here, being kicked out from there. And you're kind of like, where do I truly belong?
Yeah.
And so when do you start to kind of find your path of who you are, starting to step into who you eventually become?
I wish I could tell you it was like this defining moment. I was aspiring to be one of the top wide receivers and football players, and being, going to Chino Hills High, now known for the Ball brothers. Like I wanted to be that player. I wanted to be that guy, and I was slated to go there. And in the midst of me having to get through the trauma of even being physically abused when I was younger, and deal with those type of abuses growing up, you start having this complex, this identity complex, like, where do I fit in? And unfortunately, my brothers ran away from home at a young age, like 13, joined gangs. And then I started hanging out with them, and it was the group that started validating me and giving me my validation. And so when I should have gone to college, right in between that time, bruh, I end up hanging out with a group of guys from my team, heading out to LA. And that was when I got arrested that night. We just started joyriding, doing stupid stuff. And I got arrested that night for 6 armed robberies and attempted murder.
And you were essentially 16 to life.
100%. So I'm in LA County Jail fighting my case. The big race riots happen. They said, Mr. Osborne, we got a great deal for you. We're going to give you 16 years to life. And I said, a great deal. And I told the attorney, I said, I'll take it. And he goes, really? I said, yeah, you do half and I'm going to do half. Like, there ain't no way. And in that moment, man, that was my awakening moment where I realized, for me, I was like, okay, God, I know you created me for a purpose. I've watched this long enough. I wanted to do life on my own terms. I wanted to do life the way that I wanted to do life. And that led me to where I was at right there in that moment. And so I said, okay, look, you got to show me that you're real, because I'm in a real situation, facing 16 years to life in prison. And so I fought my case for 8 months, and it didn't work. So they sent me to Chino State Prison. And on the level, my level was so high because of my crime. It's on a point system. They put me in solitary confinement for the first 3 months, where I had nothing. I couldn't have no visit. And my parents lived in Chino. So I'm back in the city where we eventually made our way. I'm in Chino Hills, and I'm in solitary confinement, locked down 24 hours a day. They took everything from me except the Bible. And it was there that I said, you know what, let me just, God, let me see what you have for me. And as I was in there was a little sliver of light that would come in from above. I don't know if there was a level above me or where this light came from, but I would push my face against the wall, and I have scars on my cheek from me just going raw, because that was the only way I could read this word. And as I read it, I just, this love that God had for his children who kept making mistakes, this Jesus who came on the scene and took imperfect people and used them to do some pretty dope stuff, became this story where I realized, like, even though I'm in chains, I can still be free in my mind, and still impact lives. And so that's when I made my decision. Listen, I know I'm on a level 4 prison yard, and I know my cellie is 21 years old with 7 life sentences. But if I could be a ray of hope and inspire people around me to let them know that they can change their life, even when it's in here, and that God loves them, that something amazing could happen. And so when I read stories like Jesus walking on water, prison, when Paul and Silas are in chains and they singing and the prison chains come off of them and they get set free, and I'm reading all these stories, I said, well, man, God, if you can do it for them, then maybe you can just set my chains free. And so I just started impacting lives, and the head general of the Nazi lowrider prison gang became one of my closest friends. So I'm empowering him, and my dude got tattoos that shows he killed blacks. And I end up just impacting his life. God ends up moving in a massive way, man. He ends up going home. And that was when I knew that I would, whether I was in chains in prison for the rest of my life, I lost every scholarship that I had for football. I would spend the rest of my life making sure that people didn't lose because when they lost their identity, they started doing things, hanging out with people that they normally wouldn't. And I didn't want what happened to me to happen to anybody else. So as much as I could help it, I was going to spend the rest of my life helping people understand their God-given identity and connecting to that purpose so they don't end up in prisons, whether that's prisons of depression, anxiety, doubt, bad relationships. That was the moment, bro, that really, really, really shook it for me.
So while you were in there, what was going on with your family? Your mom, your dad, especially your dad, right?
Yeah, dude, it was the craziest thing though, was that my wife now, who was my girlfriend then, her family moved away, went to Vegas. They were like, leave them. She said no. So at 17, now mind you, I'm 18 when I go in, and she stays behind, goes to college. She ends up getting a full-time job, going to college. She would drive 2 hours, wait in line for 4 hours to see me for 30 minutes, and did it every weekend. My family was there to just kind of be like, yo, man, we're here for you. You need anything? What do we got to do? My dad would come in, and when he would see me between the bars, between the glass, he would crack jokes and wouldn't let my mind go where my body was in that moment. And my wife would just be there. Nadi would be there with me, encouraging me. I had friends who are my boys now, who we were talking about that we do our podcast with, who were there with me, accepting my calls. And so my family was there in that process. But the hardest part is, and I think a lot of people don't realize, there are moments, whether you're in your prison, that you could be surrounded by family, but they still don't know what you have to face as an individual when you leave and you go back.
Yeah.
They got to leave and go to their world, and the world of prison was a completely different beast. That prison was more of a head game, a mind game, than it was physical, because you would lose your mind and lose hope before you would even lose your body or lose any of those type of things. And so in that moment, they were there to kind of just support me, encourage me, and let me know that God could do anything, even though your boy was, in there facing 16 years to life.
So how'd you get out?
11 and a half months into my sentence, I'm changing lives. People give me the nickname Preacher Boy. So I'm praying for cats. Miracles are happening. They're getting out of their cases. And people are like, yo, can you pray for us? Whether you were a Sereno, skinhead, blood, Crip, it didn't matter who you were. They knew, when Preacher Boy prays, for some reason, something happens.
God is
God is working through this dude. And so I didn't know the Bible. I didn't know anything. I was just crazy enough to believe that God loved them enough to give them a second chance. And some did, some didn't. But 11 and a half months into my sentence, they said, Osborne, roll it up. You're going back up to LAX court. Now, mind you, this is in the middle of the biggest race riots, one of the biggest that happened in LA County Jail. I have a scar on my neck from when the gang member tried to cut my neck open with a razor blade while I was fighting for my life. And luckily, God just moved miraculously on my behalf, and I survived. And I go back up to court. So I'm thinking they're going to add gang allegations, added charges. I go back up to court, and they say, Mr. Osborne, upon reviewing your letter. I said, what letter? And they said, you got a letter on your behalf from the assistant warden of Chino State Prison, Joseph. I never met the man, never shook his hand, didn't even know who he was.
Wow.
And he said, this is a good young man who hit a bump in the road, let him go. And so when I should have served 16 years to life, I served 11 and a half months. They gave me a strike and a felony, but July 17, 2006, I was then 19. I went in 18. I was 19 years old, a little over a year and a half. And man, I tell everybody, God opened the door and gave me a chance to impact lives again.
You impacted so many lives while you were in there, and God delivered for you.
Yeah, it was, but I was mad. I was mad, bro, because I would be praying for cats and they would get their miracles. And I was still in there.
You're like, all right, cool.
Yeah. Like I was like, yo, God, like, what do you, I'm praying for them. At first, it was pretty dope, like to see people like, yo, preacher boy, I'm going home. Whoa, yo, and then I'm sitting there, but I'm still locked up.
Right.
And the crazy thing about my case is that I wasn't even in the area, but because they used my car for the crimes that they were charging me for, I got charged as an accessory. So I'm like, yo, God, like, I know I was doing dirt, but, and there was a moment where I decided to give up on God. Like, I was like, I'm doing everything you're asking me to do, and my life seems to be getting worse. Like, why would I follow you? And I just remember him telling me, like, yo, you remember when you said you wanted to change lives? And I said, yeah. He goes, you don't put in requests where you want to go. And in that moment, it taught me that whether I was down, whether I was up, whether I was feeling like it or not, like I never had the opportunity not to be who I was created to be, and that was to influence lives.
No matter what you're going through, you had a job to do.
Right, 100%. You got to show up, and you don't have the luxury not to show. Now you have the ability to feel when you're hurting or when you feel pain and all of those. I'm sure we'll talk about it, but at the end of the day, when other people aren't being who they're called to be, like I had all the guys in the car were my players. And they were lying. They were saying it was me. The victim said I wasn't the guy. I wasn't there. They all lied and put it on me because I was 18 at the time. So I could get more time. But even when they were not acting in their character and their integrity, it still didn't give me permission to step outside of who I was called to be, even in my pain. And I'm grateful for that, bro, because what I found out is when you choose to be who you are, even when people wrong you, time does two things. Time will either expose or time will promote. And so when you allow time to do what time does, it began to expose these individuals for who they were. And even though I didn't get the justice I wanted right then and there, because I kept my integrity right and I kept my heart right, God was like, don't worry about it. Time will expose them for who they are, but time will also promote you as long as you stay true to who you are and who I've called you to be.
Man, I love that because our conversation prior to the podcast, before we started, was kind of about identity and being true to who you are. And when you are true to who you are, so many doors open and you become less mentally fatigued.
Yes,
because it's so much easier to be yourself than somebody else. So as we move on, months, years go by, you start to become more of a motivational speaker, right? You start helping out more people, speaking on bigger stages. How does that start to snowball into what you do today?
Yeah, I get out and I get a strike and a felony. McDonald's won't even hire me. Now I'm married. I got my son, Jaden. I can't even afford diapers.
How old are you now?
So I'm 20. I'm 21. So my son is born. I'm 21. Nadi and I end up getting married when I get out. I'm 21. She's 20. We have our son, and nobody will hire me. I'm trying to scrub toilets. I'm trying to do everything, but because I have a strike and a felony, 6 armed robberies pop up. Nobody's not even trying to talk to me. And this whole time, I still have this idea that God keeps placing in my head that like I'm called for greatness. Like, and they're like, well, how do you know it was God? Because if you look at my circumstances, there was nothing there that was going into, bro.
No one else is saving you.
No, there's no indicator that your boy gonna be traveling anytime soon, speaking on stages. I didn't have no influence. A brother couldn't even, buy diapers. I was using T-shirts for diapers.
Oh my God.
And so in this moment, but I had this inclination that I was called for greatness. And so what people didn't understand is that my wife becomes permanently disabled during this process, and I'm digging through trash cans in Chino Hills, believing that I could be great. I'm sitting at Panera Bread studying for 6 hours a day. and I didn't have money for coffee. I didn't have money for food. So I would get a to-go cup and get hot water and put it in the coffee cup so it looked like I was drinking coffee. And when people would leave, I would reach over, grab their plates of whatever was left and put it in front of me. Now, I wouldn't eat it. I was tempted at times, but I wanted to envision what it would be like for me to be able to pay for a cup of coffee, for me to be able to buy, a bagel or anything. But while I'm there, I'm preparing messages. I'm speaking to myself. I'm digging through trash cans, and I have a suit jacket on, and I'm practicing my speeches, and people are looking at me like I'm crazy. But I had this dream in me, and my aha moment, if you will, didn't take place until after I attempted suicide. I took my car towards a pole at 60 miles an hour to kill myself because now we have our daughter. Now my wife is 2 years, she hasn't had a kid for 2 years now, and our kids are 2 years old, and she's still having to wear pregnancy clothes because we couldn't afford it. And my wife came from a well-off family, very wealthy. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, man, we had nothing. And so I said, look, I can't pay for my family. I can't pay for my rent, which was $800 at that time. You might as well kill yourself. And death would be a relief compared to the hell you're going through. And so I took my car, drove it towards a pole at 60 miles an hour. And I'm grateful that God spared my life that day. And right after that was when I got my first phone call from the country of Bermuda. I see this crazy number, and this guy on the other phone is like, "Hello, is this Jeffrey Osborne?" And I said, "Yeah, who is this?" "Hello, this is Prime Minister Leroy Bean calling from Bermuda, and we heard that you were once a gang member, and we have this problem here on this island, so we want to know, would you be willing to come out to Bermuda?"
Wow.
Bruh, my first response was, okay, how long does it take to drive there? Cause I didn't even know who you, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't even know. He was like he didn't know if it was a joke or for real. So kind of find out, man, Bermuda's an island for those of you who don't know. It's another country. It's a British colony, but they end up, removing me from probation and parole so I could actually go.
Wow.
Because I would be impacting lives.
All the stars lined up for this.
Like, it was crazy. So I go there, and 7 days eventually turned into 4 years of us going there and back and living there and training government officials, 600 government officials, prime ministers, presidents, vice premiers is what they call it, presidents. And from that moment on, man, God just began to open doors when they found out about my story.
What were you speaking about when you were going out there?
I was talking to them how gangs meet a need. And when a gang member finds a way to facilitate that emotional need in a different avenue, the gang no longer has its hold or its power. And it's amazing how it's the same thing for everything in life. That when if you're in a negative relationship, if you're in a place where people aren't appreciating you, or you're in this place where you are not getting the validation you deserve, but it's some type of validation, oftentimes we'll stay because it's meeting a need that we're getting attention, even if it's bad attention. Mm-hmm. And so when you find a way to facilitate that need in another manner through a healthy relationship, through a healthy opportunity, then that person who is abusing you, or that situation that is no longer serving you, loses its appeal because you no longer feel like that's the only thing I have. And so when we begin to address that and show these young men and women like, yo, there's another avenue that you can begin to succeed. There's another avenue that you have value and worth outside of the title that a gang gives you. Then you actually become in control of your life. And so it changed. My kids moved there. My wife did. We lived there. It was incredible, man.
So you're doing that for a few years. You're talking to presidents and prime ministers, and life is starting to change overnight now, right? Mm-hmm. Like, opportunities are starting to become more present for you now. And what starts to happen after that?
So I can come back to the States. They find out about, my story. And so I'm thinking like, okay, this is it. Your boy's about to blow up. Like this, I can see it now. And that's not what happened. Mm-hmm. Like, it just was like this. I would get these pops of success, and there would be seasons of fizzle. Pops of success, and then seasons of fizzle, until one day I speak at this men's conference. My boy Andre Walton ends up saying, "Hey man, why don't you come to this Bible study?" And I didn't want to go. I didn't want to show up. I didn't want to do anything. And so I'm working out the 24-hour fitness in Chino Hills. I see this buff dude working out, and his name was Rick. And I was like, dude, you're an influencer. Like, I know who you are in business. And he spent 3 hours and bought me a cup of coffee, poured into me. It's somebody who sat underneath Robert Kiyosaki, all of these people. And he connects me to another guy named Andre Walton. And to this day, both guys are like brothers to me, older brothers to me, man, and incredible businessmen. And Andre connected me to this conference. He's like, yo, what are you doing in March? I said, nothing. He goes, oh, you're speaking in Louisiana. I was like, Louisiana? Like, yo, this is the first time I'm speaking on a stage. Like, I'm going to be like, you know, this is it. And so I go there, man, and I meet Rex Crane at that event. And then after I meet Rex Crane, I meet a few other individuals, man. And as soon as that happened, it was this moment where my growth began to take place. These doors started opening, but it wasn't overnight. Mm-hmm. That's why I tell people there's no such thing as overnight success.
Right.
But like, you know what I'm saying? Like these overnight successes, there were things that happened. And as I started building, I'd have these engagements and I'd have to go back and build. But in dark, I would have these engagements, go back and build. And I tell people it's the place in the cave where you really get made. Mm-hmm. It's in the darkness that you get formed, like Bane, right? From Batman. He was like,
yeah, but it's really true. And I say the same thing with fitness, you know, as me as a fitness competitor, you see the final result on the stage, but you don't understand the amount of hours that goes on behind the scenes when nobody's watching. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes people so successful, is that we have to work harder when no one's watching. Now, a lot of people only do stuff when they get the applause.
Yes, sir.
And you don't get a lot of applause during the downtime, especially for something you do, and for even for competition. Like, you only get these little moments to shine, right? Whether you're on stage or on the competition stage in my case. But people don't realize the hours and the preparation that goes on behind the scenes. And a lot of people, they don't like to do that either, though. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the journey.
Right.
That is part of the journey. So you're doing this now, and Louisiana comes up. And so what's the conference for?
It was a men's conference. It was called Born to Lead, and it was at a church, and I spoke there first time, and I get done and they give me a standing ovation.
Oh, beautiful.
My dad was there. He was speaking as well. As soon as I get done, man, I remember I walked off the stage and I just hugged my dad. And I just started crying. I was like, we did it.
All this weight, right?
Yeah, like, bro, I thought like this was it. We did it. And we hit that success. It was great. I was on a high. Bro, they paid me, I'll never forget this, man. They paid me $1,500.
Just the top.
To speak. Bruh, I thought I was rich. Like, I was like, baby, we made it. We going to Red Robin. Like, you know, we ain't got to do the 3 tacos from Jack in the Box. Like, we get to go and eat.
We're getting endless steak fries,
bruh,
bottomless.
You feel me? We gonna splurge a little bit and get a milkshake. We gonna share, but we gonna have one. and I remember my mind was blown. Blown. I was like, I spoke for 30 minutes. You paid me $1,500. And then I started hanging out with a couple of people, and one of my mentors, his name was Frank, he brought me around him, very wealthy guy, and he kept showing me what it was like to be around people of influence, people of money, but he started showing me like what really matters. Mm-hmm. And I remember pulling up to his house. He picks me up in the car, Escalade. I'm like, all right, cool, Escalade. Wow. I'm imagining this dude pulling up to a mansion because he's a multimillionaire. We pull into this regular neighborhood, and I'm like, this dude done fooled me. Like, he ain't got no money. I wanted to call my wife. Like, baby, they gonna pull me away if you don't hear from me. Like, and I remember pulling into this regular neighborhood. His car looked like his driveway looked like a car lot. And I walked into this ordinary house, and I walked inside. It was immaculate, bro. Like, I mean, unreal. And he taught me, he says, you know, successful people, real successful people, don't have to brag about it, and they don't have to show it. They just know they have it. Mm-hmm. So it started molding my idea of what success was, right? And so then all of a sudden I'm on tour with him. I'm doing a little book tour. I just released my book, Buy the Dang Coffee.
We're going to go over that too.
Yeah. So I'm on tour with that, bro. And then all of a sudden I get this call from my boy Calvin. So Calvin goes, yo, man, we got this new company we're launching. we were looking for speakers. I want you to come. It's in Orange County. And so I was like, all right, cool. Like Newport. So he's like, do whatever you got to do. I have my wife change my flight. I'm in the middle of Buckhead, Atlanta. I'm like, this is it. I'm speaking for a company. And I go, and I think that's the event that I spoke at first.
Also, Calvin Becerra.
Calvin Becerra.
All right, yeah.
That's my brother right there, man. And so he was the first person to get me to speak for a company. Mm-hmm. I spoke, and I knew it was my moment, bro. Uncle T.D. Jakes, Bishop T.D. Jakes says, he goes, your downtime is your prep time. Mm-hmm. And I knew that when all I needed was an open door, all I needed was, I wasn't going to wait for the opportunity to come for me to be ready. And I felt like too many people, we talked about it, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. Mm-hmm. And so when the opportunity came, everything from me recycling cans, everything from me crying and preparing myself and speaking to myself and preparing my messages, all of this came for this moment where the phone call came, your boy was ready. And when I got on that stage, I spoke. And when I spoke, it was crazy. So I got paid even more money for this event, to where the headquarters of the company was like, yo, would you come and speak at our regional event in Indianapolis, Indiana? I was like, what? So I go, and this is the moment where I say this, because this is where it changed everything. I go and I speak. They said, you're going to speak for 30 minutes. I spoke for 28 minutes. They put me in a suite, like a crazy suite at the hotel. I'm walking around. I feel like Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone, dog. Like
the white robe.
Bro, I got the robe. I'm like, baby, we made. Back then there was no FaceTime or nothing like that. But I was on the phone like, baby, you hear that? That's the rapper from the food. They gave me a gift basket. Like, I got fruit. Like, I got a card with my name. I thought I made it, man. And I go and they go, okay, well, Mr. Osborne, what do you want to get paid? What's your rate? And I said, just pay me. I didn't even know at this time. I was like, just pay me what you paid the last person. Great, not a problem. All right, we're good. I speak for 28 minutes. I get off the stage. They hand me an envelope. And the envelope is for $15,000.
Wow.
For 28 minutes of speaking. Bro, my whole world.
But poker face.
Bro, like I was like, yeah, okay, this will do.
Oh yeah.
I got into that room. I was screaming. I was doing the money dance. I was feeling like I was Jerry Maguire. Show me the money. Like, I had this moment where my whole body was vibrating, but it wasn't even the money. What vibrated were the people who were crying, the people who were like, oh my gosh. People came up to me like, I've got hope now. And the craziest thing for me, man, and maybe you'll catch this and understand this, I had none of the qualifications that I thought were needed to stand on that stage. Mm-hmm. And I just can't help but think about how many people in this world are missing out on opportunities that God has created for them simply because they think or they believe in the story that they don't have the quote unquote qualifications to stand where they want to stand. And it was in that moment, man, that I learned the greatest lesson in my life is that when God is on your side, you got the majority on your side.
Amen.
And that changed a lot of things for me.
I'm imagining you go into your room and after walking through the halls, right? You're on the elevator, walking through the halls, and I'm just imagining you just like doing this fast-paced walk with this envelope in your pocket.
Yes,
and
sir.
then you get to your room, and I could just imagine like almost like a warm-up like a and then you just explode.
Bro, I lost it. But you know what was crazy is it reminds me of this moment, two moments. First one, my favorite movie of all time is Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith. Mm-hmm. And there's this moment at the end of the movie where he's going through hell. He loses his shoe. And they offer him that position from an internship. Well, it was the internship that he got chosen for. And when he's walking out and the music plays.
He's in
the crowd walking through, bruh. And all of a sudden, his face is just welled up with tears, and he's just clapping over his head, and just this breath of I don't know what to do. Everybody is passing around him, and they have no idea what he had to overcome to have that moment of victory. And when I saw that, I said, God, that's what I want to have happen for people. Mm-hmm. And it was that moment was the moment that I began to feel when I got that check. In the same token, I remember going to Disneyland, and we have some friends who run the resort. So they were like, hey, would you like to go into Walt Disney's actual apartment? And I was like, what? And it was on Main Street, right where the fire truck is. There's a little land. So we go up there, and I'm standing, and the lady who was there giving us the tour happened to be a Mouseketeer who was there on the opening day with Walt Disney. Wow. And she was holding his hand, and she said, you know, Jeff, right in the window where you're standing at, I was holding Walt Disney's hand as we were watching people come in for the first time.
And that's like a famous photo,
Bro,
right?
That's like with him facing out
of the window.
Right. And she said in that moment, she watched a single tear drop down his face. And the only thing that came into my mind was, I wonder what was in that tear. All of the rejection, all of the doubt, all of the moments where he had to believe in himself when nobody else believed in him, all the nights that he had to go with all those 7 different bankruptcies, I think it was. He got rejected crazy amounts of time. It'll never happen. And when it happened, that tear dropped down his face. And so when I came into the room, there was that pursuit of happiness clapping moment. Yeah. But then there were tears, because everybody who gave me that standing ovation didn't know all of the years of crying and doubting and the pain and the work that came into it. It looked like I was an overnight success that came out of nowhere, but your boy put some hard hours in to get to that place.
And like you said, it's more than just the money, right? Because now you look at what that money can do. And we spoke about this as well, how you could use that money as a tool, right, to help other people. Because now you could do more, right? You could travel more. You could do more for others. But not only that, you could do more for your family. You know, that's really what it was about during that moment. And, you know, like, how many kids did you have at that moment? Now 2. You had your 2 already, right? And you know, you have your wife, and now you know I can take care of them. Yeah. I could be the man who I envisioned, who before, when I tried to commit suicide, that man who I'm the man who I thought I never could be. You know?
And the beauty behind that, bro, what was so wild was it's hard to become somebody that you've never been. And this is what people don't understand about growth. It's hard to become somebody that you've never been. And when you've never been that person before, you need somebody to show you how to get there. And I think this is where my moment of faith came in, because when I began to read the stories of the Bible, and this God that was like, yo, you'll do it exceedingly and abundantly above, and you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. And you hear things like, man, for man it's impossible, but for God nothing is impossible. And you hear the story of this man named Jesus who came on a scene and loved those that nobody wanted to love and did the impossible. And he goes, yo, these things and greater you'll do. When I began to read that, I was like, okay, God, then I need to start seeing myself how you see me. And this is why when I look at my practice of really having people understand your identity, and I coach my clients, I tell them that I'm not the specialist of your life. You are. I'm not going to give you solutions. You ain't coming to me to give you the answers, because God has given us everything that pertains to life and being in right standing. So the answers are always inside of us, but we have to ask the hard questions that pull that out. And so when you talk about that, everybody has an inclination like, okay, there's more. There's something that's inside of me that I may not be living. I just don't know how to do it. And that's what really prompted that, where I had a glimpse of it. I had this feeling of it, but I didn't know the process of how to become that.
So one thing I want to touch on now is, now since you've reached this new pinnacle of success, right? Your life growing up is now completely different than the life you're giving your children. Yeah. How does that start to impact, and how do you start to treat them compared to the way you were brought up?
Bro, that's
like the lessons, right? Like the life lessons, because obviously they're different now, you know?
Yeah.
So let's go into that.
Yeah. So I tell people, I tell my clients, and I tell when I speak, awareness of is the freedom from. Awareness of is the freedom from. I'm 31 years old. I'm having a hard time breathing that day. I'm about to go preach at a Wednesday night at our service. My wife and I are leading the campus as pastors. And I black out, slam my head, get rushed to the hospital. I'm having a heart attack at 31 years old. I'm a vegan, don't smoke, don't drink. And the first thing I thought was like, man, God, if I'm going to go out, a brother should have had some ribs. Like you should have, like I should have had some ribs if I'm going to go out here. I am sucking on leaves and I could have had some ribs. But the other side of it was like, God, I'm not empty. Like there's got to be something different. And the reason why I say that is because when I had the emergency angioplasty surgery that cut my arm open, go across my chest cavity, I was like, this ain't it. Like I'm not empty. There's something inside of me. And it was this moment that I had to face myself. It was the moment that I had to realize I had to face some of the abuse that happened to me as a child. I had to confront my dad and about some of the abusive, like just discipline that happened. I had to confront all the things that were in me because I was struggling as a dad to show affection. I thought it was more about discipline and doing what I tell you to do more than understanding and giving them a voice. And it was this moment where I got burned by another pastor before we had come into this other church. And it was this moment where I had to stand up for my family, and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't stand up for myself. Why I'm 31 years old, I don't have this voice, and I'm leading people, but I can't stand up for myself or my family. And it wasn't until I realized, like, man, you got some daddy issues at 31 years old. You got some stuff in your family that was dysfunctional that you've carried over into your life. Mm-hmm. It was how I raised my kids. It was me looking at discipline and how I handled that. And so I had to, Nadia and I would always clash because my dad was from down south. So it was that hard, and he was from the military. So it was that hard discipline that was abusive. And I'm not talking about abusive because you got popped. Like we got cracked. Yeah. And I had to confront that. But how that changed was I realized that at the place in my life where my dad should have affirmed my voice, he took it from me. And here was my son growing up in age, and it was more important for him to respect me than to love me. It was more important for you to do what I told you to do instead of me hearing your heart in the matter. And I began to learn that in that moment, I wasn't being the dad that I knew I could be. I felt like I didn't know how to love my son and my daughter. I couldn't confront that until I started having to become aware of the dysfunction in my family, aware of I call them ungodly beliefs that we hold on to, that begin to, in psychology, they call it time release beliefs. And these are beliefs that are triggered when you're young, they're implanted in you when you're younger, that you see stuff, whether it's manipulation, whether it's people pleasing, whether it's, things that you see, and they get triggered as you get older through certain events. And so when I became a parent, the only type of parenting that I knew was that abrasive, that bold, that positioning. My wife grew up completely different. And so when I realized that what I was doing wasn't serving them, and I went back and I had to confront and be awareness of is the freedom from, of the dysfunction in my family, and being aware of the abuse that took place that I ignored and pretended, the physical abuse, sexual abuse, not by my parents, by another individual, it was a babysitter, and he used to watch us. When that happened to me and that happened to my sister, I had to confront these demons, if you will, and it wasn't until I started confronting them head on and going through psychology, going to see psychologists and therapists, that I began to realize that these unhealthy beliefs were going to hurt my kids if I didn't change it. And so I had to first pretend, I had to stop the pretending, right? And get true with who I am. And I tell people, it's not until you get real that God becomes real. And it was in that moment that God started doing some healing in me, bro.
Yeah, because that's kind of what happens, right? Like, and I grew up in this, mom's Mexican, my dad's Puerto Rican, and I grew up in the IE where everyone, Hispanic culture, and that's usually how it is for that kind of that older generation too of parent, is that it's a little more of a harder generation, right? Like you get hit with a tree branch, with a cable,
Whatever
with
you
a
can
shoe,
find. Yes,
whatever they
sir.
could get their hand on type culture, right? And so as we now, the next generation, our parents, and now we're raising our children, it's kind of the same thing, right? Because like, same thing. My wife was raised a different way,
Yes, sir.
where she's so much more loving and
Yeah.
nurturing,
Yeah.
and I'm a little bit opposite of that,
Yeah, yeah.
but because of the way she was raised, and I see the way she is with our son, it forced me really quickly to be like, okay, I like the way she's doing it.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
You know? I like the way she's doing it. I like her approach more. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm still a stern parent. I still,
Discipline.
still discipline. I don't let my kid get away with anything, but I am a lot more nurturing than the type of parent I thought I would have been if I wasn't with her. You know?
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing is that we, I love there's a verse in the Bible that says, train up a child in the way that they should go, or raise up a child in the way that they should go. And when they grow old, they won't depart from it. And I think sometimes we look at our lives as parents and we disqualify ourselves from being able to break cycles because we base ourselves off of our past. And what's so powerful about that verse is it says, train up a child in the way that they should go. So not in the way that you went, in the way that they should go. And so even though I may have gone one way or my life would have gone no way, I get to break that cycle at any given chance.
Yeah.
And that's the powerful thing about life. We feel like we are slaves to our past. And so we got forward thinking dreams, but we keep having our past on replay, and we don't realize that at any given moment, we can stop that replay loop. We can rewrite the chapter. We can break the cycle when we make the choice to be able to do that. And so I may not have been able to change what happened to me as an individual, but I get to change how I associate and affiliate myself with what happened to me at any given moment. And so when I make the decision to break that cycle, it starts with me, whether my mom or my dad are still in their dysfunction, my brothers and my sister, whether I got validation from anybody else. The beautiful thing is we are 100% in control of our lives because we get to control how we look at our situations.
And it's almost something that you had to do for yourself, right? Because it kind of comes down to almost being hypocritical, where you're over here changing other people's lives and having them live their best life, right, and to move forward and have a better future. But you yourself were still kind of living in the past. And so did you feel like that elevated you even further once you started to, tackle those demons head on?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%.
Because now you can live the true you.
There you go. And I think this is my, I get excited. You see me adjusting and shifting because I didn't realize that here I am traveling the world now at this point. I'm speaking on stages for businesses, Fortune 5 companies. I'm in front of professional athletes. I am speaking at some of the biggest conferences in other countries around the world. I'm talking 20,000 people. And I would get off the stage and feel like a complete failure because one person didn't do something or one person made a comment. And it was then that I realized that I struggled with the disease to please. And I think one of the biggest, that's why my focus is on identity and understanding who you are, because the Bible says your gifting makes room for you and places you in front of great people. And the reason why we aren't in front of great people or great opportunities is because God won't promote frauds. Like if you're going to have true happiness, good success. Now people become successful from their hustle and their flow or what they do, but eventually it catches up with them. The story catches up with them like we talked about. But I think that when you live in your authenticity, regardless of what that is, you get to define what success is for you, and you get to define what fulfillment is. Because we shared that we were talking about this, is that at the end of everybody's success looks different for you as it does for me. And we can't copy and paste success that we see on Instagram. I call it Insta-greasy, right? Or on Twitter or Facebook or social media or whatever that is. You get to define that. But at the end of the day, we all want to feel fulfillment.
Right.
And so the moment that you know what, it was crazy? I watched The Last Dance. And there was this moment
The Michael Jordan
The
documentary.
Michael Jordan
For people-
documentary.
for
Yeah,
people who don't know.
yeah. That's the Michael Jordan documentary
people
on
thinking
Netflix.
of a dance movie.
Yeah. No, it ain't like dancing. But Michael Jordan, The Last Dance, was talking about his life and his story. And I specifically remember his demeanor and how he was like, yo, if the ball's on the line, if it's all on the line, I want the rock in my hand because I can trust that I can make things happen. And I remember asking myself this question, like I was struggling because I'm pastoring a church, it's growing. We're going to be hitting 1,000 people. I'm traveling the world. I should be happy, but I wasn't. And I felt guilty because of it. I felt guilty because I wasn't happy. I was battling depression, anxiety, but I was empowering everybody else. And one day I wake up, man, and I go look at this book. And I felt like God pressed it on my heart. And I pick up this book and I open it up. And the book was entitled, What You Think of Me Is None of My Business. And this book is like from the 1980s. I couldn't tell you the author right now. But I open it up in chapter 4. It says, God is your source. And so I start reading. It's 4:00 in the morning. I'm in the garage, bruh. And I'm reading this book and I start bawling. Yeah. And she says the biggest challenge with most of us, why we don't live our dreams and live in our true identity, is because we think that people won't accept us for who we truly are. And that if they don't accept us for who we are, they somehow have the determining factor of deciding whether or not we're going to be successful in life. And so it starts off when you're young, like a kid. If you're in the doctor's office, your mom or your dad will tell you, you want to run around, you wiggling, you trying to get your play on. And they say, listen, if you be a good boy or a good girl, I'll give you this cookie. Or we'll get ice cream afterwards. Or you get this lollipop, or you get a sticker. And she said the problem is when we grow older, we never lose that mentality. So anybody who dangles any type of success or something we want, a carrot in front of us, we will become somebody who we're not because we have taught ourselves that they're the only one who can give it. And so when I read in that book that God is your source, it blew my mind because oftentimes we will make other people our idols and our gods. And we'll tell ourselves they're the only one who can give me love. They're the only one who can give me affection. They're the only ones who can open this door. And so we do whatever they want us to do. We acquiesce, we play small. We get into fields and businesses that we don't want to. We start companies out of people pleasing, not knowing knowing in our hearts that's not what we want to do. Not because we can't do it, but because we've made them our source, that we're not living in alignment. And the moment that you realize that it's God who blesses you, it's God who opens up the doors of success to you. There's a scripture that says, in the Bible that says, the heart of the king is in the hand of the Lord, and he turns it whichever way he pleases. Like the rivers of a water, he turns it whatever way he pleases. And in that moment, it taught me that when you're living through integrity and you're putting God first and you're living, and it's just my experience and all of my other clients, that God has a way of opening doors when you shouldn't have those doors open. He has a way of giving you wins and becoming Mr. Olympia when everybody else said that you couldn't do it, or stand on stages when I got a strike and a felony. Your boy still can't even get TSA pre-check right now. You know what I'm saying? But I think that when I realized that God was my source, Joseph, everything changed for me. So then that means that I get to be independently interdependent. And this is key. That means that I get to independently choose who I partner with and who I get to become interdependent with as I live in true authenticity to who I am, because man doesn't determine how high I go. God does.
Yeah, we talked about that too, the whole false idol thing, right? Yeah. And excuse me. And so my older brother, he's the one who kind of really got the whole false idol thing in my head, right? And it's mainly due to social media. And so he would like kind of send me posts every now and then and be like, man, look at these people like idolizing these celebrities, right? Or idolizing someone who has success, or it looks like they had success overnight. And they start to almost mimic these people, right? They try to copy what they do day to day. They want to make their Instagram look like their Instagram because they think it's the way to success. And they start to build these false idols, these false gods in their eyes. And they start to post pictures about them and they talk about them. And it's always a topic of conversation, or going to be their false idols or false gods. And just like you said, the one true God is our Lord and Savior. And so when you follow him, that's when the doors truly start to open. Otherwise, not only do you follow false gods, but when you follow them, you start to open false doors.
Yes, sir.
And
Wow, that's huge.
And that's the reason why things usually end up failing when people start to create these type of companies to please other people, because it's not what they're meant to do.
Yeah, and look, I ain't gonna say anybody's name. I'm not gonna incriminate myself, but there are people who walk around with false IDs or had them when they were younger to get into clubs, right? That you weren't supposed to get into. Now, it ain't me. I'm just saying other people. But the crazy thing about a false ID is it gets you into places that you weren't supposed to be in the first place, which means you come in contact with relationships that you weren't supposed to be in the first place because it wasn't the right time. And so when we walk around with false identities and we pretend to be somebody else, we get involved with relationships that we shouldn't. We get involved in business deals that we shouldn't because we're walking around with a fake ID. And so the goal is that if you really want to see who's supposed to be around your life, be your true self. I tell couples in the beginning of your relationship, you better be you to the max. Don't be trying to look cute and eat a little bit when you want to get your grub on and you murder food behind closed doors, right? Fellas, don't be trying to be like, act like this and act like that so you can get them to like you. You want to be your truest self in the beginning because that's the quickest way to weed out who's for you and who's not for you. People would save themselves so much heartache, Joseph, if they begin to let go of their fake IDs, then you get to enter into the real relationships, the real business deals, the real opportunities that you're supposed to be in. So yeah, those false gods and following those people, if you will lead you into false doors that you think is success, but it's not. But it's like you said, you get tired. It is so tiring and exhausting being the person that you aren't created to be. There's something in science called psychoneuroimmunology. And simply what it states is that the longer a person stays outside of who they know they're created to be, their bodies actually physically begin to break down. And I think it's so funny how you have cancer so prevalent now more than any other time, depression and anxiety more than any other time, because we live in a society that is living a fake life and living outside of who they were created to be, that God has created your physical body to tell you when you're in a toxic relationship, to tell you when you're at a job that you're not created to be at, to tell you that you're pursuing something that you're not supposed to pursue. And yet we try to ignore it, and your body is telling you it's that idiot light in your car that tells you get it checked out before you break down. And it wasn't until I realized 2 years later, after my heart attack, I started studying the disease to please. And I realized that the number one sign of somebody who is at the highest level of people pleasing was heart attack and stroke. And when I was 31 years old, I was at the highest form of people pleasing. By the world's eye, I was a success. Every day I battled depression and anxiety. I was coaching people to live their best life, but I wasn't living my best life. And it was this moment, bro, where I just decided, you know what? I've got to live an authentic life. And that's what started the journey that we talked about, where I made the transition to be myself, but it was the most inopportune time to be me, but I knew I had to do it.
Man, you hit the nail on the head with all the stuff you just talked about, man. Like, we are so eager to make other people happy, and the thing with social media, right, is that it gives people an extra avenue to do that. Where before social media, you can only do it in person.
Right.
So it wasn't as stressful. It wasn't as tough on the body.
Right.
But now with social media, it makes it so much easier to become a different person than what you really are. And that's the reason why you'll see people take a break from social media, right? Like they disappear for 3 months, 6 months, a year, and they come back. Oh, I feel better now. I had to recharge. And most of the time it's because they're being somebody else on social media, and that becomes so mentally exhausting.
Absolutely.
To live a double life. And I've seen it with plenty of people that I know personally, and I'll see them and I'll talk to them in person, and then I see them on Instagram. I'm like, that's not you.
Right.
You don't talk like that. You don't believe in these things.
Yep.
And Next thing you know, they're off social media for 3 to 6 months and they come back.
Right.
You know, and
Right,
I'm like,
right.
and that's when I started to see it, right? And so I got into the fitness industry at a very young age, you know, and I got sponsored by my first supplement company at 21. I was under a contract, and I seen them just single-handedly just take advantage of these athletes, and they didn't even care. They would kind of just let it happen because they were under a big name, and I don't want to say names, but you know, and I seen it firsthand. And so I wasn't that big of an athlete, so I was kind of just watching from the outside eyes looking in, and I'm like, man, I don't want that to be me. Like, I don't want to have to change who I am or believe in products or promote products I don't believe in just to get my name out there, just to be friends with these people who I don't even want to be friends with in the first place.
Right.
You know, but they have a big social media following. I'm like, I don't care. And then, you know, and people will tell you right now, like the fitness industry is a very toxic industry for this reason of people pleasing. And you will have people like, you'll hit them up and they're like, hey, I want to get a workout in with you. And they're like, oh, well, are you going to pay me?
Right.
Or how many followers do you have?
Right.
It's like, dude, I just want to get a workout.
Right. Like, yo, let me get a pump in, bro.
Yeah, you know, and it's very like, what can you do for me type of industry right now. And that's the reason why for me, I rarely do a lot of promoting or even marketing for myself, because I don't want to get intermingled with those type of people. And for this reason, I have a very small circle of friends, you know, so, and I'm okay with that though.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with having just a few handful of people who I can truly be myself around and really tell my life story to, where some people, they need to be liked by everyone.
If you want to be liked by everyone, you will be controlled by everyone. I'm going to say that again for somebody who's hearing that. If you have to be liked by everyone, you will be controlled by everyone.
That's perfect.
And I think I was watching, man, I don't even know I was watching a clip, and they asked this guy, they said, hey, what's the most overrated thing that you see people do and they live by that you say is just like completely overrated? And his response was being understood. He said being understood is the most overrated thing that people focus on.
Yeah.
Because no matter what you do in life, living in your true identity, you're going to be misunderstood. And if you're trying to waste your time making sure that everybody understands you,
that ain't going to work.
It ain't going to work. You ain't going to go nowhere, because you're going to be trying to draw up 5-step plans on how you can be understood, right? Or why you can start that business, or why you can go and build the body that you want, or why you get to be the husband or the wife that you desire to be. And at the end of the day, anybody who's great, look at the greatest artists of this time. One being right now, Kanye, Kanye West, whether you believe in him or not, he has been one of the most misunderstood dudes, but yet his misunderstanding is what brought him to become one of the top billionaires in the world. And I think we have a bigger fear of being the only one. And I tell my clients, and I talk to it, it's okay to be the only one. It's okay to be the only one who believes what you believe. It's okay to be the only one who takes the route that you take. It's okay to be the only one who chooses to step out and believe something impossible that most people don't believe. It's okay to be the only one and launch a freaking podcast, Fluential and Friends, and freaking crush it. It's okay to be that, because at the end of the day, the right people will circle your vision, bruh. And if you want to be liked, you'll have the wrong people circle your vision, because they're not praying for you, they're praying on you. They're praying on your dream. They want a piece of what you have only for what you can give me, and not because I want to genuinely support who you are.
Yeah, and when you lose all that, who's around after that?
Bruh. That's the quickest, you hear it all the time.
That is the quickest way.
You lose everything and you broke, you can't get people in the VIP, or you don't have that success. There's nothing worse, being at conferences and you speak. I love when I'm not I like to go and just sit down in the crowd before I go speak. And I'm walking around and people may not look at the boards or look at the lineup of speakers, and I'll just sit in the crowd. I'll just, sit next to people. I'll talk to people and they don't even know who I am, right? And so they're talking, and it's amazing how when you're talking to them face to face, they're looking over your shoulder to see who's the next person they can say what's up to try to get a hand up, or they may overlook you because you don't have the type of followers that you think. And the greatest people who had the most influence, Jay, were the people that everybody overlooked and they ignored, who happened to be the ones who actually made the decisions, right? And so I tell people, take the time to speak to everyone, because you never know who holds the key to the next level of your elevation. Not because you're an opportunist, right? You're looking for somebody, but because you genuinely care about people. You'll find God will use people to bless you in your life. And when you use people, you will lose opportunities. And so, but when you see them for who they are, the real ones who can make it happen, and you're authentically who you are, then you get to step into relationships, not because of what somebody can do, but because you genuinely care. And those individuals will actually want to help you out.
I agree. And I love that you said how you'll kind of just sit in the crowd and you'll talk to people who don't know who you are. Because when you do that, you get a lot more of a genuine version of that person you're talking to before they know who you are.
Right.
Because if you walk around and you're like, hey, I'm Jeff Osborne, I'm one of the speakers, or you can, because of people pleasing, the
100%.
person you're talking to will become a very quick yes person, right?
Yes.
And so anything you tell them is going to be yes, yes, yes. So whenever you're able to have that genuine conversation and they don't know who you are, you get a lot more of an authentic conversation with that person. And I actually have a pretty good story on that. I was at a fitness competition last year, and I wasn't competing. I was just in the crowd. I was talking to this older gentleman, probably in his mid 40s. Sorry if you're in your mid 40s, I just called you old.
Yeah.
And he was like telling me how he did his first competition. I'm like,
Right.
oh, dude, that's great, man. He was like showing me pictures. I'm like, dude, you look really good. Congratulations. And then the MC on the mic started talking, and she was like, oh, we have some pros in the house. She goes, we have our 2019 Mr. Olympia champion, Joseph Ortiz here, Iron Man magazine cover model, right? And she's like, put your hand up. So I put my hand up and I wave. And the guy looks at me. He goes, why didn't you tell me that?
Right.
And I look at him, I go, you didn't ask.
Yes, sir.
Because he was so excited to tell me, right? So if I
Yeah.
would have cut him off and be like, oh, I compete too, I'm actually the Olympia champion, he would have went into possibly like a position of, I'm not worthy to talk to him, in a sense. You get what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
And I don't want to put myself on a pedestal saying that I'm this type of person, but I didn't want to take away from his genuine happiness that when he was telling me this. And so whenever he was talking, I was just like hyping the guy up, you know?
Yes, sir.
And so I'm sure you probably had that same reaction though, when you kind of just walk around and people don't really know who you are. You get to have these genuine conversations because you are a world-renowned, motivational speaker, man. People know who you are. And so with that territory comes a lot of yes men. And we kind of have to figure out how to wean around them and be careful, because too many yes men will kind of lead you in the wrong way as well.
Oh yeah. The greatest relationships are the one that you want to cuss them out. You may want to punch them because they tell you the truth,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And my mentor, my pastor, Obed Martinez, I never had anybody call me out like he called me out one time.
You need that.
And he called me out, and I didn't know whether to hug him or to punch him. Like I just didn't know. And he called me. He was like, yo, Jeff, like, you're full of it. You know, you're in a world now where you're dealing with big boys. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Like, and it was a scenario that we had talked about, and I didn't know if I was going to come on staff. And it was him and another friend of mine, Adam Mesa. That's my brother now. He called me out on some stuff that I did, whether it was knowing or unknowing. But those relationships, those hard ones, you know it's a real relationship if they're willing to risk it to tell you the truth.
Absolutely.
If you're not willing to risk our relationship to tell me the truth, you ain't here to serve me. You're here to hurt me. And so that's why I love my wife. Because I'm on the stage, Doc, and then I get off, and everybody's standing ovation. She's like, yeah, it was cool. Like, you know what I'm saying? If you got to deliver, you can deliver here, you can deliver there, not to tear you down, but they're going to keep it real with you. They're going to keep it funky with you, like I said. And so even when it comes to my coaching practice, I'm not here to coach you to become your yes man. I'm not here to be your best friend. I'm here to be your coach. And so we're going to deal with the issues that are hard issues to deal with, so that you can become the best version that you were created to be in those relationships in your life, whether it's a romantic relationship, whether it's a business relationship, whether it's a spiritual relationship. They're going to call you out on your stuff so that you can become the best version of yourself.
That's the type of people we need to keep around.
all the time.
Absolutely.
Not keep them at a distance. You keep them around.
Well, that's the thing, right? When people get these genuine people around them and start telling them what they need to fix and improve, sometimes people will actually take them out of their lives for that same reason, right? Because they don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that negativity. And I'm doing air quotes here for people who aren't watching, because in reality, it's not negativity. It's more just criticism, right? Like, it's to build you up and make you better, as long as it's coming from a genuine state. And we need to try to keep those people around us. We can't let our ego become bigger than who we really are. And, you know, ego is probably the worst thing. Ego and pride, right?
Yeah.
The two worst things that you can have is a big ego and a big pride, thinking that you're bigger and better than what you really are. So I want to kind of move on and just talk about what is next for you. What is your next goal? What are you trying to accomplish now?
Man, I'm excited. I've got a lot of big projects that I'm working on.
Are you allowed to talk about that?
I can't talk about some of them, man, but I'm definitely excited about me launching something. I will share here, the first ever. Nobody's heard it before, but
exclusive.
It's exclusive, right? Exactly, a Fluential and Friends exclusive right here. I'm launching something called the Locker Room Academy. And what I'm really excited about is I wanted to find a way to reach people on a bigger level. I wanted to find a way to reach, because I only take on a certain amount of coaching clients a year, and traveling, but I really wanted to make sure people could get, you know, blessed. And so I'm going to be launching the Locker Room Academy, and I'm taking all of my friends, the best of the best from all over the world, from all different fields of business and areas and real estate and big old huge executive producers in the music industry, from real estate and, you know, to different investors in the crypto and NFT space, to fitness people, to you name it. They are the best of the best at what they do. And I'm going to be able to give people a firsthand view of being coached, not only by myself, but by them, an amazing arena, if you will, in the locker room. And the reason why it's called the Locker Room Academy is because greatness isn't made on the field of life. It's made in the locker room. And that's what the coaches talk to you before you start the game, that you getting your head right in the locker room. It's halftime, you getting your butt kicked, your coach is going to talk to you in the locker room. If you got a victory, your coach is going to tell you what you did great. If you take a loss, your coach is going to help you. But at the end of the day, greatness is formed in the locker room so that you can compete in the game of life and freaking crush it. And so I'm stoked to be able to launch that. And so that's something that we're definitely the team and a lot of my people are working on. But for me, my goal is to be able to impact more lives than ever before. And the way that I'm doing that is through speaking, through coaching, through books. You know, I've written 2 different books, and I'm writing some more, doing a lot of ghost writing as well. So it gets out there without me having to be the person, but it's carrying, boss. But I'm excited for that.
Man, well, I'm excited for you, and I'll definitely be keeping an eye out for that. And when you do start to get ready to launch it, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to promote it.
Come on,
as
dog.
well. You already know I'm in your
Yes,
corner
sir.
for
Come
no matter
on.
what. But I do want to go on to this book that you brought today called Buy the Dang Coffee.
Yes, sir.
And I've heard you talk about this so many times that you always promote it, and you're obviously one of the best guys at promoting anything. And it's funny because I'll get on my social media in the mornings, and the Instagram algorithm doesn't really like a lot of people, so sometimes I gotta search for you. But I'll find you and I'll bring you up, and I pull up Jeff T. Osborne on Instagram, and I just see your big old smile, your big old mug, and I just hear, God morning, I'm about to hit you guys with this morning espresso shot.
Yes, sir. Hello.
and I love the God morning because it's like you could say good morning, but what's better than good? God.
You better believe it, babe. Hey, you know what? It was dope is I didn't even mention that, man. I'm so excited for our God morning line that we're going to be coming out with. And we did a soft launch and some hats. But the whole purpose of God morning was to simply say that when you wake up, before you go to your Instagram, before you go and think about your problems, before you think about that, if your first focus is on God, the one who created your day, and you pray and you meditate, that when you focus on God in the beginning of your day, He's going to give you the strategy to crush the rest of your day. And so when you have a God morning, you're not just going to have a good day, you're going to have a God type of day. And when you got that God type of day, you got God favor on your side, you got that God type of peace, you got that God type of power. And so what's better than a good morning is a God morning. And so, and it's now a way of life. It's a movement that when you see it, whether you're rocking a gear and it's in the first thing in the morning, you rocking the gear at nighttime, whether you're rocking a hat and it's mid-afternoon, it's a reference point to let people know that I started off with a God morning, so it's bound to have a God day.
And that's going to make people double up because people will see something that says God morning, like your hat on
Yeah,
your
yeah,
head
yeah,
right
yeah,
now,
yeah.
and people are going to be like, is that spelled correct?
It's a conversation starter, big dog.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
So let's talk about the book, though. So, By the Dane Coffee, how'd you get the title? What's it about? Hit me.
Yeah, I love it, man. By the Dane Coffee, the tagline is one sip is worth the risk. And when I wrote this book, Nadia and I were at the worst part of our life. We had no money. I had no influence. And yet I had this concept for this book. And so before we lost everything the first time, we were at this place where, you don't have I would buy Nadia a chocolate croissant and a grande iced soy chai with an extra pump of chai every day, bro. $7.49. That's what it cost back then, right? Now it's the inflation on the coffee, but it's a lot more. But when we went, I would go buy that. And then when we were struggling financially, we didn't have no money, bro. We were using my neighbor's Wi-Fi, but so if y'all don't know, that's you could pick up their signal. So I would go next door and be like, hey, bro, hey, for some reason my reception isn't working. Can you restart your router so I can move it? Yeah, can you move it a little bit so I can see it? So man, but in that moment, when you're young, you follow these gurus that tell you, what you got to do is you got to cut back. If you're struggling financially or you're trying to get to a place where you want to go, you got to cut back. And so Nadia and I had cut back. We cut back from cable. We cut back from going out to eat. We cut back from buying new clothes. We cut back. And one of the things you cut back from, like everybody says, is going to Starbucks. Because everybody tells you you're spending X amount of dollars every day on a cup of coffee that equates to X amount of dollars a week, which equates to X amount of dollars a month. And that money could be used to be put away for savings. And so
by the end of the year, you could be a millionaire if you stop buying coffee.
100%, right? And so all of a sudden, bro, so I'm in this place where we cut back from everything. Your boy became depressed. No football, no cable, no eating out, no nothing. And one day, man, I'm praying and I hear these words, go buy the coffee. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, nah, I'm just, and I felt like I was in my prayer time. So I hear it again, go buy the coffee, like this impression on my heart. And one of the things that people ask me, how do you know it's God? How do you know God is speaking to you? And I tell people, it's him when it's a thought. That's a thought that you would never think about. Not a negative thought, but a thought that's like, hey, turn left up here. Hey, go see this person. Hey, pick up the phone and call this person. It's the inclinations, right? We call it intuition, but it's God speaking to us. So I kept hearing this and I was like, no, I'm not doing it. And I kept hearing it, go buy the coffee. I'm like, that's $7.49. I'm trying to be a millionaire by the end of this year. Like, it ain't happening, God. I ain't doing it. And so finally, I hear him say, you can go buy the coffee. And so finally, I'm like, fine, I'm going to buy the dang coffee. So I took whatever money I had. I walked down to Starbucks. And when I opened the door and they were like, Jeff, oh my God, it's so good to see you. And I'm standing in the doorway. I'm the only 6'3" black man in the door named Jeff. And I'm looking around like maybe it's somebody else. And they're like, I was like, oh, shoot. So I walk in. And when I walk in, Joseph, bro, I'm walking around. I'm hearing hustle and bustling. I'm seeing people move. I'm seeing people smile. I'm watching people live life. And I go up and they're like, do you want the usual grande iced soy chai with an extra pump of chai and a chocolate croissant? And I was like, yeah, I'll take that. And so they said, okay, $7.49. And I'll never forget, like, my hand was trembling when I was handing them the money.
Because you were struggling.
I was struggling at that time. It was, you got to cut back. You got to. And, bro, when I gave that money and the exchange happened, something happened inside of me. It was a moment that I felt like God said, my resource never runs out. Everybody else may be in a recession. Everybody may tell you to hold back. But for me, my resource never runs out. And when I handed that money, it was an act of faith to believe that God would begin to provide for me if I took the step out in faith. And so what I did was I felt alive the moment I did that. It was the moment when they handed me that iced chai, that grande iced soy chai with an extra pump of chai, that chocolate croissant not warmed up. And I walked out that door. I felt alive for the first time in God knows how long. And I made a decision that I never wanted that moment to stop. And so the next day I was like, I showed up again. And there were times that I didn't have the money. I had to recycle cans or dig through, the couch cushion. But I made a commitment that I would never stop doing the steps of faith that would allow me to realize that God would match me at the place of my faith if I did the work. And the reason why this is so key is because the whole book says one sip is worth the risk. And for many people, that cup of coffee, this is buy the dang coffee, but that cup of coffee may represent something different for every person. That coffee may be the dress that you want to do. That coffee may be you stepping out and getting that house, getting in that relationship, getting that car, asking for that promotion. That cup of coffee is that moment of faith where you're saying, God, I'm going to step out and I'm going to believe that you're going to be able to back your boy up or back your girl up to make this happen. And so I took the principles in that book that I learned in this moment that allowed my faith moments. That was the risk that I took. The risk to step out and launch my coaching practice again in mid-pandemic when I transitioned off of being in full-time church staff. The thought to be able to step out and make myself known and put myself out there on Front Street, if you will, to believe that I could do something that I've never done before. So I took those concepts like, I took the concept, there's a chapter in there called residue, which is so powerful because if you're in a place in your life where you don't see what it is you want to see, it's important that you put yourself in the atmosphere so that the residue of it can rub off on you. I think of it like pixie dust, like Tinkerbell and Peter Pan, right? You get a little, you get a little bit of that pixie dust on you. You begin to fly when you start imagining what's possible. And so I would drive down to Newport Beach and I would sit at the coffee shops and I would imagine what it would be like to be able to do these things. I would be in these areas. I would do these things. And before I knew it, I was taking these risks in my life that were stepping out, and God was meeting me at my moment of faith. And so that book, Buy the Dang Coffee, is about how one sip, that one taste, that one open door, that one opportunity that changes your mind to have you believe that God is for you, he's not against you, that he has big plans for you to live an abundant life. But we have to take the things that step out of our comfort zone and take that risk. And when you do, that one sip, my wife sipping that chai in that moment, and then it came to me now being able to get my grande flat white. That's been my drink. That one sip was worth the risk. That one sip of success, that one sip of love when you stepped out in that relationship, that one sip of you looking at that outfit, or that one sip of you stepping out and getting a personal trainer and getting that body. That one sip was worth the risk that it took to step out and bet on yourself.
I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Jeff, I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank you for sharing your story and putting your energy into everything that you do and the things that you say. You're genuine, you're authentic, you're real. And I think I want to thank you, not just for me, but I'm sure a lot of people listening today, because I feel like a lot of people needed to hear this conversation, in a time and a place where authenticity is becoming more and more rare due to social media, due to people pleasing, due to past traumas. I feel like these type of conversations can help open the door to let people know that it's okay to get help. It's okay to be you. And these type of conversations are just meant to be.
Yeah, bro. I think it's big, man, and I'm honored to be able to be here and to share that and to let people know that you get to be unapologetically you, and there's great things in that.
Absolutely. my guy. And thank you again for not charging me $20,000 to come on to this podcast.
Yeah.
And I think I speak for myself and a lot of other people too, where I say we got to do this again.
Bruh, hey, listen, you say the word and I'm coming. Just give me enough time so I can do some pull-ups and some push-ups and I'll be good to go, my dog.
Well, hopefully next time you come in, I'll have some weights in the studio.
Hello, there we go. Clanging and banging, baby. Let's go.
So let the people know where they can find you, where they can find the book.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're interested in coaching and seeing what that looks like, you can head over to jefftosborne.com and look on there. I have my ebooks on there. We sold out on all the other books, but we'll have some more merch coming on there. You can find me on Instagram at Jeff T. Osborne, JEFFT as in Tom, OSBORNE. That's all my handles on social media. But those are the best ways to be able to reach me. And if you want to reach out to me through email, shoot me an email, info@jefftosborne.com, and I'd love to connect with you.
Awesome, man. Is there anything else you want to leave us with?
Man, go. Hey, I tell people this all the time. If you don't supersize your dream, you'll live a happy meal life. I love that. So go big, supersize that dream, and let go of the little happy meal life so you can have that big life.
Hey, Jeff, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on.
Appreciate you, man. Love you, bro. Woo! Bruh, you're a natural at this.
Oh, stop.